You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you at home. Welcome back to the Guardian sports writer Jonathan New and the Telegraph's chief football writer Sam Wallace. OK, Manchester United, the gift that keeps on giving. We're heading to the Mirror and once again comments from one of their former players in Roy Keane, laying into Manchester United, it says in David McDonald's piece, and into his star, Bruno Fernandes and his Old Trafford teammates labelling them imposters. Right, Sam, where are we at with this? Because, you know, we've seen this completely inconsistent form with Manchester United, and yet Bruno Fernandes has been, you know, behind a lot of assists and a lot of goals for Manchester United in the recent past, even though their form has been up and down. So how do you see it?
Well, I don't think it matters how I see it. I think it's all about how Roy Keane sees it, and he's definitely not having that argument that Bruno Fernandes has saved United. I mean, it was a pretty astonishing debate, and I suppose it's the kind of premium football content that every podcast is reaching for. But Keane is kind of like the sort of the protector of the flame at United. He stands, I think, amongst the supporters for everything that was good about that era. He joined in '93, didn't he, after the first Premier League title, and he's such a famous player because not just because of what he did on the pitch, because of his personality as well. And it was such a kind of impassioned debate with Ian Wright, and I could see where Ian Wright was coming from, because when you watch United, I was at Goodison on Saturday. Fernandes is clearly their most talented player. He is the best signing by a long way of the post-Ferguson era, and I think he probably would have got in a few of those Ferguson teams. He's certainly the only one at the moment that would have done. So Ian Wright was forming a pretty reasonable argument, but I'm afraid that the years have passed and Keane has just seen enough of this team and of Bruno in particular. It's funny because years ago they used to say about the Liverpool teams of the 90s and the noughties that there were far too many famous ex-Liverpool players working in punditry, people like Alan Hansen and Mark Lawrenson, who were talking about the old days. But that's nothing compared to the number of former Manchester United players who won Premier League titles now talking about the current generation. And it just goes on and on and on, and there's plenty of them on Sky as well. So I think for the United players, the weight of history is pretty heavy indeed. Yeah. We heard from Keane not so long ago. Wayne Rooney as well, weighing in with his views on his former club. Imposters, Jonathan, what do you make of that particular term?
Yeah, with it, I guess its implication of, you know, fraudulence, the fact that he's almost, you know, stealing a wage, he's cheating the club. Of all the players, of all the United players, I'm playing the game now because, you know, this is the cycle of opinions and whatever. A man says thing on podcasts, and then, you know, newspaper prints thing that man said, and then TV show debates thing that newspaper said, and now But like of all the players at United to pick on, somebody like Bruno Fernandes, who has, I think, carried this club at times, certainly carried certain of his teammates when things have been really down in the doldrums for them, who has adapted, who has shifted, who has adapted his game to a litany of new coaches coming through like a revolving door. I think this is the part of the job that certainly Amorim underestimated. I think a lot of United managers do when they come in. The fact that, like, in my email inbox, usually it's more the spam inbox these days. It's like some email from a betting website. Louis Saha says this. Philip Moore-Ryan has some opinion about Diogo Dalot. Like, what, you know, David Bellion thinks that, you know, the current team wouldn't play with his kids' team today. You know, it's just this constant economy of opinions on Manchester United, which then have to be dissected like they're serious opinions, like they are worthy of our time. And I'm sorry, I've taken up about 2 minutes of your time with all this, but it's a game that we all play, right? But I don't. Does it help Manchester United win football matches? I don't think so.
That's the point of the entire ramble there. So if you'd like to comment on social media about what Jonathan New has said, about what a newspaper has said, about what's said in the podcast, please feel free to, and continue the cycle.
Keane yesterday was particularly forceful about Bruno Fernandes in the way that he tends to be. What is your assessment of Bruno's as your captain and the impact he's having on your team at the moment?
Yeah, I heard about that. I have a different opinion. Bruno is really important for us in the club, special for me. He's playing well in the difficult context. He wants always the responsibility. I know that sometimes as a captain he do things like with his arms, and sometimes you see it in the criticizing the teammates. I think is most of all is a lot of frustration for this year and the last year and the others. He wants to win, and sometimes it's really hard to deal with that frustration. But like I said, everybody has an opinion. Roy Keane has big standards from him in his time, and it's normal to have an opinion. I have an opposite opinion, and I think it's more important, my opinion, than Roy Keane, because I'm the coach, and I think he's.
It is time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And pleased to say, joining us are ESPN senior writer Mark Ogden and Riyadh Al Samurai, chief sports feature writer at the Daily Mail. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly run through the Back Pages. Back page of the Mirror covers Alejandro Garnacho being told to buy dinner, or maybe volunteering to buy dinner for his Manchester United teammates after his bad reaction to being taken off in the Ipswich game. They also say Guardiola is biding his time to hit back at those who've described as Manchester City's haters here. And more on Garnacho making amends in the Sun. Good headline there. Nachos are on him. They also cover the news that Arsenal have made an offer to Joshua Kimmich, who's a free agent in the summer. Times has a pretty great photo. Shows Oliver Bearman being put through a grueling test out of his F1 season. They also report on Jos Buttler's decision to quit as England's white ball cricket captain. Guardian also covers that England cricket news with Harry Brook tipped to be the next skipper, and they depict Plymouth's Maxim Talavirov, the Ukrainian defender, preparing for another shot at FA Cup glory, this time against Manchester City. So was Aston Villa in action though on Friday night against Cardiff. Let's get a story from the Mail Online just to illustrate that. Aston Villa 2, Cardiff 0. Marco Asensio bags another brace as Unai Emery's men reached the FA Cup quarter-finals. Mark, they huffed and puffed a bit, but how important was that for Aston Villa? The hunt for silverware goes on.
Well, I mean, obviously with so many big clubs out of the FA Cup this year, Villa have got a real chance of winning something. It's been, I mean, I can't remember the last time Villa won a trophy. I think we're talking, mid-90s. So for such a big club, to go so long without a trophy, it's a big deal to get into the quarterfinals. And you'd have to say that, the path is opening up for Villa, because who's the favourites of the FA Cup this year? Probably Man City, but they're not in great form. The holders, Man United, are even worse form. Newcastle are a threat, but again, they've got a tough tie against Brighton. So for Villa to get into the quarterfinals, as well as being in the Champions League, knockout stages, there is a real opportunity for Villa to win something this season. And we know that they've got a pretty substantial wage bill, and their turnover to wage bill is quite tight. But you've got to say that their recruitment in January, certainly with Marco Asensio coming in, has been a massive lift. They've done really well. Asensio could be the guy that takes them to a trophy, and obviously we know that Marcus Rashford had an assist tonight, so maybe their January investment in signings on loan could get them over the line for a trophy. Yeah,
it's looking pretty good, isn't it? The Asensio signing in particular, Riyadh, but clinical again tonight.
Yeah, I was at the Chelsea game last weekend, and I think the relationship there with Rashford's going to be quite an interesting one for a number of reasons. We've obviously seen it again tonight. Rashford's sort of teed up the first one for him. I think it kind of came off his heel. You wouldn't describe it as the world's cleanest assist. 2 good assists against Chelsea for him as well. It's a really interesting dynamic there with Villa, because undoubtedly with Asensio in particular, you're talking about a guy who won whatever it was, 15, 17 trophies at Real Madrid. I was speaking about him with my colleague Tom Colomossi, and he's never really been the main man anywhere he's been for all the success he's had. And at Aston Villa, there is that opportunity for him to step up and really be this big player for them. But if there's a drawback, when I look at Aston Villa, I don't necessarily see too many problems with the attacking players. And when you look at Watkins and Rodgers as well. They have got great players going forward, but particularly when you have Asensio and Rashford in there, I do see a side that's a little bit weaker off the ball. Asensio, quality player as he is, he's never been one you'd readily identify as a guy who's going to close down, who's going to lead a press from the front. So for Emery, that's actually been a big problem this season at Villa. So whether or not it solves a lot of problems or solves more problems than it creates, that's what we're going to find out. But he looks like a really fantastic signing for them in January. And that relationship with Rashford, they do seem to have this innate understanding very, very quickly. Given how many hours we've spent on this show talking about Marcus Rashford, it's quite an exciting thing to see. He looks happy. The fans there are really embracing him, and as Mark said as well, this is a great opportunity for Villa. Emery was talking down whether or not they're contenders before the game. I couldn't quite sense the logic in why he's saying that. I think they've got a huge opportunity here. So they have got their problems. They have got a lot of injuries, particularly at the back. So they've got a lot that they need to fix, but you look at the sort of, even at their bare bones, the quality in that squad, they should be aiming high.
Yeah, you just wonder if it's the first year since 1957 Villa could win the FA Cup. We'll see about the draw for the quarterfinals holds on Sunday evening. Will Manchester United be in it? The draw takes place after their game against Fulham. But it's not Marcus Rashford, it's the current incumbent, or sometime incumbent on the left-hand side, Alejandro Garnacho, on the back page of the Sun, Mark. Nacho's on him. I completely missed this earlier. I thought they were talking about Mexican food, but obviously it's a reaction to Alejandro Garnacho, so I was put correct in the newsroom. Ruben, Al will buy dinner for sub Strop. What do you make of the way this has been handled by Garnacho and Ruben Amorim, though? It's been done quite well, wasn't it, today, the way it was presented?
Yeah, I think so. I think, obviously in recent weeks, Amorim has been quite firm with how he's dealt with players, maybe over the top a little bit, certainly with people like Marcus Rashford. Some of the things he said were quite critical and quite heavy-handed, to the point where you thought, well, is there any way back? And it could have gone that way with Garnacho, because obviously he's dropped Garnacho for the Manchester derby, obviously when Rashford has dropped, he's been in and out of the team, so he could have used today to say, bad display of petulance, I'm not happy with that, I'm going to drop him for a game or whatever. But he turned it around to make quite a funny story. It's almost like Garnacho's having to do a forfeit to pay for what apparently was just changing his clothes. So I think he's handled it well, Amorim. And his mood today did seem a little bit more upbeat than it has been in recent weeks. And obviously there's been a lot of negativity around United recently, on the pitch, off the pitch. Like you said, we talk about United not just every week, but every day. And it's usually a bad story. So I think today, at least, there's a bit of fun there. There's a bit of kind of a smile on Amorim's face. And let's see how long it lasts. But like you said, they got Fulham at the weekend, and that's not going to be an easy game. So smile while they can is probably the best advice.
Make for some fun headlines in the tabloids, doesn't it, as well? Riyadh Mirror here we can go to. Man United apology fits the bill. Garnacho to pay for dinner to say sorry after sulking when subbed. Fed Devils is the headline. What's your assessment of it? There is a contrast with Rashford, isn't it? Garnacho seems at times a combustible character, but one that seems to be winning Ruben Amorim over.
I think so. Look, it's one of those with Garnacho. If you go back to him sort of sulking off the pitch against Ipswich, there is this parallel conversation that Roy Keane has breathed a certain amount of fire into in the past few days about the personality, the character, and the makeup of that team. And look, did Garnacho commit some cardinal sin? I wouldn't say that, but is it also symptomatic of a team and a squad that isn't necessarily made up of the right stuff? My instinct upon it happening was it looked a little bit sulky. I didn't particularly like it. I think Graham Souness has had his view in the Mail as well now, going into this weekend about young players. It taps in with what Erik ten Hag was saying as well about you have to be very careful with the modern player. What can you say to them? With that conversation in mind, I think Amorim's handled it well. I find him quite fascinating as a manager. Clearly, in our line of work, we like someone who is honest, someone who isn't a closed shop when you have a conversation with him. I do wonder, and it goes to Mark's point a moment ago with Rashford, I thought he said far too much. not least for the fact he might have knocked a substantial amount of money off the resale value of Marcus Rashford. I think he contributed to him being in that corner. Now, with Garnacho, we're a long way from having that kind of conversation, but he did probably say far more about that scenario than we would necessarily expect. So it's an interesting situation. I think this current thing, it's a bit of fun. It's probably going to be good for team bonding. So from United's point of view, it's taking something positive out of something that was possibly could have been drummed into a negative.
And they always make the headlines, don't they? Manchester United in the Express and Star as well. Wine and dine, the headlines there. Wine spelt with an H for those people listening and not able to see those graphics. Mark, what's your take on the broader cultural conversation this week? Of course, Ruben Amorim saying to the cameras today that his opinion's more important than Roy Keane after Roy Keane's assessment of the apparent lack of passion of Bruno Fernandes. Is there a cultural kind of clash there, or is there a deeper point that Keane's made about the players and desire?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think obviously Amorim, his appointment, he is right in what he's saying, that he's more important than Roy Keane right now in the world of Manchester United, and his opinion matters most. But I think Roy Keane had a point. I think a lot of the fans will kind of share the point that a lot of the players at United, they're not good enough, they're playing for themselves, they kind of hide behind certain players. And I think the point he was making about Bruno Fernandes was that he's not the sort of captain that will lead players. But I think if you look around that squad, I kind of agree with Roy Keane in that one, but who else would you give the captaincy to? Because it's not a squad that's full of people with character or leadership skills or even ability to be in the team. So I think the reality is that Man United squad and the team is nothing close to where it was 10, 20 years ago, but that's the reality of the modern day Manchester United. Bruno Fernandes is their best player, so he's the captain, but he's not a natural leader. But I think if you could clear out the Man United team and say which of these players are worth keeping, you probably have about 2 or 3 standing and the rest would have gone, and that's not feasible in the modern game. So you have to make do with what you've got, and Bruno Fernandes is the best captain possible for Man United right now within that squad.
Okay, we'll see how United get on against Fulham. Manchester City, meanwhile, Riyadh up against Plymouth Saturday evening. Arguably the last thing really standing for the champions of the Premier League up against the shock artists of the last round of the FA Cup. The headline to the side of the Garnacho picture in the Mirror, Pep biding his time to fight back. Jeremy Cross reporting that Pep Guardiola has vowed to hit back at the Manchester City, quote, haters when the time is right. This is in the wake of Javier Tebas accusing City of financial deception, which Manchester City deny, along with all the other allegations against them. Riyadh, what did you make of this and the way Guardiola has handled it again? It seems, again, a guy quite beleaguered. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. That's been the theme of his season. It's been the theme of their season, and even longer. They're under siege on the pitch. I don't think they've been much better than an absolute shambles this season. And off the pitch, they're facing this absolutely monstrous threat, which sounds like it could come to a head in the next few weeks. I think this is possibly the biggest moment in the recent and not even too recent history of the Premier League. What happens next with Manchester City? I think it's going to define Guardiola's time at the club. It's going to define everything that we say about Manchester City. Did they win by playing fair? Was it done within the rules, or wasn't it? Hopefully we'll get something definitive and not another 5 years or so of appeals and counter appeals, which I half suspect will be the case. But when you look at it now, the FA Cup, they do need to do something, anything this season. Champions League going out to Real Madrid, it was embarrassing the way that second leg played out, the way they've rolled over. Even this season, when you balance it against Rodri's injury, players getting older, it's been a footballing disaster for them. So this is that one glimmer of light. I think from Guardiola's point of view, there's only so much he can even say at this stage. This week, the latest allegations, these matters going to the European Commission. It's just one uppercut after another for Manchester City. They need to find some level of sustained form. I would still back them to be top 4 in the Premier League come the end of the season, but as far as trophies go, it's the FA Cup or bust.
Yeah, and it's against Plymouth, Mark, albeit at home, who shocked Liverpool in the past round. The Guardian, we can have a story here. They've got a feature with Plymouth's Maxim Talavirov, pitched there with his Ukraine flag. Big 6'4" Ukrainian centre-half, impressed against Liverpool. I mean, how disastrous would it be if Plymouth somehow, fighting relegation in the Championship, could overturn City tomorrow evening?
I mean, there's been a few shocks in Man City this season, but that would be the top of the list, wouldn't it? And, I know Plymouth are taking 8,000 fans to City tomorrow. It'll be a great occasion. But, beating Liverpool was a massive shock. But to win at City, I think, I just don't see that happening. But if it did happen, wow, I mean, where do you go from that? I mean, City then with no trophy this season. So wait and see. But I do think City will win this game. And there's probably the favourites to win the FA Cup. But yeah, Plymouth, they deserve the day out. And who knows? They might take it to extra time and penalties, maybe. You never know.
You never know. Intriguing watching ahead. So thank you for now. Mark Riath, back to you very shortly. We are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's papers, including this in the Express, where they lead with the end of Jos Buttler's captaincy of the England cricket white ball team. We'll have more on that next. Welcome back. You are watching Back Pages tonight, and it's welcome back to ESPN senior writer Mark Ogden and Riath Al-Samurai, the chief sports feature writer at the Daily Mail. Let's come to the Express. Mark, for you, the end of the road for Jos. Resigning as England skipper is right move all round, says Buttler. This after they crashed out the Champions Trophy after defeat to Afghanistan. Mark, just wonder as a mainly football writer, what you make of the emphasis on the captaincy and the fact that this isn't unusual for a skipper to fall on his sword after such a low moment.
No, it's like a manager going in football, isn't it? It has been a succession of bad results. But I thought it was really interesting to listen to Brendan McCullum on Sky earlier on today, just reacting to it. And he was basically making the point that, the England squad and Jos Buttler himself, that they take everything so seriously. There's not a lot of enjoyment there, not a lot of freedom within the players. And he says that maybe sometimes they need to kind of loosen up a little bit. And I think Jos Buttler was kind of embodied that kind of sense that they're a little bit too tight and uptight at the moment in the England squad, and they're worrying about the minor details rather than just playing cricket. So it's probably a good thing for Jos Buttler from his personal game, but also for the cricket team in general to move on and change the captaincy, because the captaincy has a lot more influence on the cricket team than on the football team. So I guess the change of figurehead will help the team, maybe a different personality, a bit lighter on the squad and the focus of the game. It might just help, but that seems to be Brendan McCullum's view, that it might not be a bad thing for Buttler or the team that the change has happened now.
Yeah, it might be interesting to get Roy Keane's thoughts on it. We probably won't get them on Jos Buttler and the England captaincy. Riath, let's get yours. Time Sports Supplements, quote-unquote, sad Buttler resigns as captain. Do you think he's the fall guy here? Does it just reflect maybe that England have gone off the boil in terms of player quality, that maybe the emphasis is on other formats? What's your read on it?
I think where we talk about kind of captaincy in different sports, it's kind of hard to understate just how important it is within cricket, far more so possibly even than when we're talking and hyperventilating about Bruno Fernandes at United. I mean, these guys are front and centre, calling the tactics on the field. And you flash the Times there. I was reading Mike Atherton earlier this evening to sort of describe him as looking overwhelmed and out of ideas. I think that's a fair reflection. We're talking about one of the great England batsmen in white ball cricket, who has been a pale impression of himself with the bat. Results have been dire. They've flopped in 3 tournaments in 18 months, 2 very poor World Cup defences, and it is time. And I look at it when we talk about the captaincy, just how much it actually can take out of a player, and the appeal, therefore, of playing without that burden of leadership as well. It's why when we talk about the successor, the overwhelming favourite is going to be Harry Brook. And I'd be looking at that saying, do you really want to do that to such a talented player? Isn't he going to be a far more benefit to have him out there and doing his bread and butter, rather than adapting to this leadership, taking on that added responsibility? And that's whether that's calling field positions, whether that's fronting up to the press every day. You can see it grinding someone down. My hope for Buttler would be that we'd see something a little bit like Joe Root in the Test arena, where given that little bit of extra freedom, having that lifted off his shoulders, he came back into that sort of better version of himself, immediately starts smashing centuries. So, you know, you'd hope for that with Butler, but certainly this sort of step today, it's actually felt a long time in coming. It's been, you know, I think you go back 6 months and people were talking about whether or not there needed to be a change, and that's going a long way back. You know, they've made a very poor start to this season. Champions Trophy has been a shambles. They're out of that already. So it's, you know, this, no one would say they didn't see this coming, but personal hope would be, is this really something they want to go and thrust onto Harry Brook next? Because you could just see how much it reduces a player.
Strange, isn't it? Yeah, ultimate honour, isn't it? But then it does seem to have an effect on the players. The captaincy weighs heavy. Let's go to football and transfers. I know it's early, but the Sun have gun and cop Kim scrap. Jordan Davis and Charlie Wyatt reporting Arsenal and Liverpool are set for a tug-of-war battle over Joshua Kimmich, the Bayern Munich player, who can also play at right back sometimes, can't he, Mark? What do you make of this and those links to those clubs?
Well, obviously, Kimmich at 30 years old out of contract in the summer, he's going to have a lot of people that are interested. I know that Man City have had a tentative interest in Kimmich as well, and I think any decent club out there that's got ambition would look at Kimmich because he can play different roles. I know Arsenal looking at, you know, Martin Zubimendi as well, so again, they seem to be looking at midfielders rather than the big obvious part of the pitch they need to find a player, which is up front. But yeah, Kimmich would be a great signing for a lot of teams, but there is a suggestion that he might end up staying at Bayern Munich as well, and this might just be agents trying to, you know, get clubs to put a bid in to make him get a better deal out of Bayern Munich. But he's a great player, Kimmich, and he's certainly a player that would benefit a club in the Premier League.
Where do you think he might go out of those two, Liverpool and Arsenal, Riyadh? What would make the most sense? I suppose, particularly if Alexander-Arnold leaves Liverpool, you could have him as cover for centre mid and right back.
I think he could play for almost any club. He's a superb player. He's incredibly intelligent. He's a brilliant passer of the ball. He's composed. He's versatile. I can't see why anyone wouldn't want him in that side. Arsenal's need is going to be pretty pressing. Partey out of contract in the summer. I think the same goes for Jorginho as well. So they need him there. The fact that he can cover it right back as well is a massive bonus. As Mark's saying, the position they really need is striker, but that midfield need is also very pressing as well, depending on what those other contracts are going to do at the end of the season.
Yeah, we'll keep across that situation with Joshua Kimmich. Then big win for Bayern Munich to go 11 points clear in Bundesliga. Meanwhile, let's talk, saving the best to last, about Mark's piece on ESPN.com. Donald Trump has expressed an interest in Greenland, well documented on the day he's made the headlines elsewhere. On that though, CONCACAF or not, Greenland just want to play soccer, Mark. So tell us about this piece and why we shouldn't read too much into them maybe wanting to play against America.
Yeah, well, I went to Greenland about 2 weeks ago just to do a piece on their football team is desperate to play somebody somewhere because they can't join UEFA because they're not a member of the United Nations, despite being a part of Denmark. So they're trying to join CONCACAF, and they applied in May last year to join CONCACAF, so well before Donald Trump was elected as president of the US. But since then, obviously, Donald Trump has been elected and he wants to buy Greenland or acquire Greenland. So the Greenland FA was supposed to meet CONCACAF in Miami yesterday, but that was cancelled because there's a bit of too much political heat on them right now. But listen, it's a country of 50,000 people, but they're very passionate about football. They're Man United fans, Arsenal fans, Liverpool fans all over the place. They just want to play. So they're hoping that CONCACAF will give them the green light to play against the Caribbean islands, Mexico, US, hopefully in the future. So we're waiting to find out what happens, but they need to find a home because they don't have a home to play at the moment. They don't have anyone to play.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Another day, another big debate surrounding Manchester United. And of course, when Roy Keane speaks, the football world listens. The United legend has once again fired shots at the current squad, with Bruno Fernandes in particular coming under heavy criticism. But this time, there's a twist. Ruben Amorim has stepped in to defend the United captain. So, let's break it all down. Keane didn't hold back in his assessment, labelling Bruno and some of his teammates as imposters. Strong words, but not surprising coming from a man who set the highest standards during his playing days. Keane believes Fernandes despite his talent, is not the leader United need. And let's be honest, Bruno is a divisive figure. His body language, his gestures on the pitch, his constant frustration, it rubs people the wrong way. But does that make him unworthy of the armband? Before we continue, a quick reminder. If you're passionate about Manchester United and love getting real, no-nonsense discussions like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We bring you exclusive content every day, and you won't want to miss it. Now, back to the debate. Some argue that Bruno has carried this United side through their toughest moments. Despite all the chaos, he remains the club's most creative force, racking up assists, scoring goals, and playing a crucial role. And that's exactly what Ruben Amorim pointed out when asked about Keane's comments. Amorim dismissed the criticism, saying Bruno is vital to the team and that he steps up even in tough times. He even admitted that while Bruno's emotions can sometimes get the better of him, it's simply down to his winning mentality. So, where does that leave us? Is Roy Keane right to call out Bruno? Or is this just another case of United's past? Legends demanding the impossible. One thing is for sure, being a Manchester United captain is not an easy job. The weight of history is immense, and when results don't go your way, the criticism is brutal. Now it's over to you. Do you agree with Roy Keane? Or do you back Bruno like Amorim? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, stay tuned for more updates on everything Manchester United. Glory, glory, Man United!